So welcome everyone, my name is Sukant Chandan, I'm one of the coordinators of the Malcolm X movement, and although we're having this event today and it's a very important subject, the reasons why I'd like to share just in a second, but I'd like to bring us to a disaster, I suppose, we had just over a week ago in West London, but it's a disaster that was designed, and that was the Grenfell massacre. There's 480 plus people are missing still, so it's probably around that figure of martyrs and fatalities that our people have suffered. And as any of us, I'm sure, start to think about it, we become very traumatized and upset and disturbed and outraged by this. And it reminds me of the way our people are treated in our homelands by imperialism, that they're set up to be killed, and then once they're killed, imperialism pretends to sympathize with them in a strategy to take away their independent resistance to fight for their own rights and justice. And in terms of the Malcolm X movement, I don't think we haven't had a formal policy, but I can be pretty confident our position is this. Just briefly on Grenfell, because it's important to tie these things together. We do not believe that the British state will deliver justice to the survivors and the martyrs of Grenfell. We can't ask the very people who are the arsonists to get justice against the arsonists. It's impossible. It makes no sense whatsoever. We believe in justice for the Grenfell martyrs and justice now. And that means we know the people responsible. And the way we tie this with other conflicts around the world is that the Grenfell survivors, they're being manipulated to take away independent action and advocacy and struggle for their own rights. And the Grenfell Tower, to me, is representative of the internal colony in this country. The internal colony of which we are all subjects, not citizens. Not in de jure, but de facto. We can see with Grenfell, when are they going to get justice? Where are no arrests? And Grenfell Tower, the carcass of the Grenfell Tower, in which our people are still there. For me, it symbolizes Iraq, Palestine, Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria, and Yemen, and Somalia within this country. That war externally has come home, and so that's a really important issue of justice. So I just wanted to make that point because it's obviously a primary issue in our minds today. And I wanted to talk about Somalia and the importance of this, and the Malcolm X movement wanted to hold this event because the Somali community are not respected in this country by the political left. They're not engaged with, they're not talked to, they don't reach out a hand of partnership and unity. And this has been a problem for decades. I remember when Somalis first came to this country in the late 80s. My friend at the time in primary school, Daha was his name, he came from Somalia. And then that's when I, as a preteen, started to learn about, because I never knew anything about Somalia before then. Anyway, the story of the Somali community in Britain is a very interesting story when it pertains to migrants, to a Muslim community here, to a black community here, to an African community here, and to a working class community here. I find them personally very inspiring community, despite all the problems that there are in that community, as there are in other communities. The Somalis are one of the most oppressed and exploited communities in this country, as well as perhaps the Roma traveling community. I can't think of many other communities who are more oppressed and exploited. And there's much to really appreciate from your community. It's really a beautiful community that has so much to offer the people of the world. So the Malcolm X movement is very much dedicated and committed to assisting and facilitating the popularization of Somali history and the present, etc. So it's really great that Brother Mohammed has come down all the way from Leicester. It was a difficult journey. The brother finds it much easier to travel between here and Kenya, here and Somalia. our infrastructure is really deteriorating in this country. But I've known of Brother Mohammed Shirey for a few years, and I thank you for the political biography in the English language of Siad Barre that you've written. You haven't got any copies here, but people can get copies from you.
Yeah.
It's the only political biography of Siad Barre, as far as I'm aware, in the English language. It's a really well written book, and it encapsulates an important part of quote-unquote third world history, of humanities history and African history and Muslim history as well, that I hope people will engage with. Mohammed Shirey as well, if you don't mind me saying, he's one of the founders or co-founders of the initiative called Somali Faces on social media. It's a brilliant, really brilliant initiative that really humanizes and brings forth the nuances of what the Somali people are going through, and celebrating them as well, and talking about the everyday stories of everyday Somalis. So that's wonderful. So please welcome Brother Mohammed. He's going to talk about the resistance of the Somali people to the drought and the famine. He's going to give political and historical context with that. So welcome, Brother Mohammed.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sukun, by the way, for the...
Speaking to the microphone.
So can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Just a quick correction. When you said Somalis arrived in the 80s, actually, their arrival predates the 80s. And the Arabs, I think, was after World War I. They were one of the first African communities in the UK in the early 20th century. When it comes to the Grenfell Tower, I know you touched on many critical points. What I would like to add is, when it comes to the Grenfell Tower, is we as a community are quite reactive. We wait for things to happen, then we react. And that's something that is inherent to us within us. Instead of seeing this as an opportunity to demand justice, we stay idly and start licking our wounds, and that's something that has to change. Martin Luther King said when he was in the Birmingham jail, he wrote a letter saying, "I'm in Birmingham because injustice is here." He already addressed the injustice that he was in there for. So as a community, we have to also address that injustice. We have to seek justice no matter what. By just licking our wounds and staying reactive and just wait for it to die out, it's not going to help us. And that's something that I know you reiterated that, Sukun. Now, I was going to address or talk about the Somali Faces project, to be honest. And then Sukun told me that, just add also a brief introduction about Somalia, its history, and also emphasize actually why a lot of people don't care about the Somali community and as a country. Somalia, although it has a familiar narrative in the media, I'm sure you guys are quite aware, images of pirates, terrorism, what else? Refugees, warlords, famine, etc. These are the images that seem to be perpetuated in the media, and that's something that I think is ingrained in many minds, unfortunately. Somalia is a proud country with a long history. It used to be called the Land of Punt. A couple of thousand years ago, it used to trade with the ancient Egyptians. The pharaohs used to visit the Land of Punt and trade with the Somalis. We used to trade with the Indians, with the Chinese. So there was a vibrant trade network in that region. And then as Islam emerged on the Somali Peninsula, in Somali continent, Somali area, sultanates started springing up. Those sultanates, those vibrant sultanates, such as the Adal Sultanate, the Ifat Sultanate, these were quite large sultanates that had a huge impact in the Horn of Africa. Some of them were actually quite fierce anti-colonial resistors. For instance, there was a Somali community in the Barawa town, which is a port town in South Somalia. In the 15th century, the Portuguese Empire tried to invade them, attack them, and try to colonize them. They resisted them. They made sure that they resisted them with all their might. And that's something that was not highlighted, because when it comes to the Somali anti-colonial resistance, it's quite on the plate. It's quite actually, it's not much known to the wider community. Now, for example, a lot of people are aware of the Ashanti Wars and this type of anti-colonial resistance in Africa. But when it comes to Somali anti-colonial resistance, there's actually not quite many widespread information about it. And that's something that, to be honest, requires us to unearth that and actually present that. Now, when it comes to Somalia, and I'm talking about the Somali ethnic group, the Somali people. Now, the Somali people inhabit a large area in the east of Africa, in the Horn of Africa. They inhabit an area called Djibouti, in Ethiopia, this western Somali region called the Ogaden region, the NFD, the Northern Frontier District in Kenya. You got Somalia. These are the areas that the Somalis inhabit. Now, before the colonials arrived, you didn't have any of that. You didn't have that nation state or any of that. These divided colonial states. There was actually quite free border. This was quite interconnected community. Now, obviously, you guys are familiar with the Berlin Scrum for Africa, Berlin Conference in Germany. That's where the Somali community or the Somali ethnic group was divided into 5 states, 5 colonial states. A piece was given to Ethiopia, a piece of the land. A piece of the land was given to the British Kenya colonial state. A piece was given to the Italians, called Italian Somaliland or Italia Somalia. And a piece was given to the British, called the British Somaliland. And the French were also given a piece. So basically, a lot of these European powers at that time got a piece of the Somali land. And even though they divided the Somali peninsula, yet the level of anti-colonial resistance never diminished. It was always active. It was apparent. It was quite vibrant. It was quite, it was basically when it comes to anti-colonial resistance, it was quite how do you call it? When it comes to anti-colonial resistance, it was quite widespread in the Somali Peninsula. It was not specific to one region, but it was widespread in all the areas in the Somalilands. Now, this was before the 20th century, before 1900s. You had, when the Italians tried to invade an area in Banana region, which is the capital of Somalia, a local Somali group tried to resist them, and it's called the Lafora incident, or the Washekh, where they resisted the Italians trying to dominate their country, or dominate their land. Similarly, you got the Marca uprising, you got the Jubaland area, where you had a lot of anti-colonial Somali clans trying to resist the European invasion. You had the most famous struggle known in the Somali history, which is the Darawish movement. Now, that Darawish movement can be arguably be considered as one of the most active resistance in Africa, and the reason being is they waged 21 years against the British Empire. Wow. 21 years were actually thrown in back, and that's something that was quite apparent. They basically made sure that they let their presence known. In the end, they were subjugated, and the reason why they were subjugated is because they called in for aerial bombardment. And it was the first time where a colonial power or a European country bombarded an area in Africa to subdue the Darawish movement.
Was that Sufi?
Yeah, they were not Sufi, they were more like a fighting Sufi group, actually, yeah. But then with the mind that they would want to liberate the areas, trying to resist the colonials and try to create a nation state. That was their actually ultimate aim. They almost succeeded, unfortunately. They were unmatched when it came to the weapons and the arsenal of the British Empire. Now, these are all anti-colonial resistance in the early 20th century that the Somalis, the Somalis actually participated in. And even though the Darawish movement was subjugated and they were actually destroyed, unfortunately, it somehow inspired another community, another generation to actually keep the fight going. Now you got people like Sheikh Bashir Yusuf, who was also an anti-colonial leader in the northern region, in Bur'a. He basically led the anti-colonial resistance, but ultimately he was betrayed by his kinsmen, by the fellow Somalis, fortunately, and he was hanged by the British.
What year was that?
That was in the 1940s. Similarly, you got the SYL movement, which was a political movement made of young Somali professionals. They passively resisted the colonials, the Italian colonials in South Somalia, also known as Italian Somaliland or Italia Somalia. You got various actors, various anti-colonial Somali leaders that basically kept the fight going. And unfortunately, and something that I've come across, because I've researched a lot, and when it comes to that, it's quite unknown, especially when it comes to books, when it comes to, and that's actually one of the primary reasons why I researched a lot of facts of that area, because I'm trying to unearth that particular piece of information so that it could be known, instead of just trying to hit from the wider community. Now, just to move on, so I'm just going to give it briefly. Somalia achieved nationhood in 1960. Okay, that's when British Somaliland and Italian Somalia joined together and became the Somali Republic. Now, initially, the Somali was quite happy. They were free finally. They became independent. They thought, finally they're going to milk the, they're going to try to build their country, the nation state for the first time. Unfortunately, the problem with that was you had a lot of lackeys during that period that were in the government that unfortunately worked with the Italians. So you had the Somalia entered, even though they left colonialism, they entered a new form of neo-colonialism. And because the Italians still had a vast grip on the economy in Somalia. Now, that's been going on for 9 years, from 1960 to 1969. Things got really bad. Corruption was widespread, was rife. It was everywhere. The people were tired. The people were tired. They were so tired that they actually wanted some kind of coup d'etat to happen, to actually take over, to basically get rid of these corrupt officials. Now, the only institution at that time, in the 1960s, was the military institution that the people actually trusted in, because the military institution was embedded in the local population. They worked with the population. They had this type of crash programs. They integrated with the population. They helped them out. The people trusted them, so the people wanted them to actually do something about it. That's when then in 1969, Somali president was assassinated by a lone soldier, some kind of personal vendetta of clan feud, and the military took over. Now the military took over, and then people were quite, re-energized. They thought, finally, we already left that stage of neocolonialism. The military took over, a lot of good things gonna happen, which it did. The Siad Barre government enacted many laws and many programs that modernized Somalia in the first 7 years. We finally had a written script. We had a lot of crash programs. We had self-help reliance programs where we actually built our own country. People were educated. There were universities were built. Things like that. There was some kind of sway of modernization that was sweeping the country. People were energized. They were hopeful. But as you can imagine, Somalis still wanted to restore the lost lands. Remember, 5 Somali states, colonial states, were divided by the Europeans. So initially we went to war with Ethiopia. We wanted to reclaim that land back first. Obviously that didn't work out well. I know this is quite a long story. I'm not going to go back into detail with that. But we lost that war because the Russians switched sides, because Russia was our original patron. But they switched sides and started supporting Ethiopia. And a lot of the Cubans switched sides as well, similar to Saudi men and other countries. And the Somalis were defeated. Now, once the Somalis returned from the war, things started actually going downhill from there on. And just fast forward to 1991, civil war erupted. Somalis have been without a country for the past 25 years. Somalia was known for the past 25 years as a failed state, but now it's no longer known as a failed state. It's now known as a recovering state. I think this year they elected a populist leader, President Formaggio. People are quite hopeful now to actually, try to restore their sovereignty and their nationhood. What I'm trying to say is that when it comes to Somalia, it's quite a complex situation. It's not a quite linear where you have cause and effect. You basically have a lot of factors, dynamic factors at play. There was a lot of foreign interferences, foreign meddling. There was a lot of internal factors. All these basically came together as some kind of. It basically blew up in 1991. I was born in Somalia. I was born in Mogadishu, but I left there as a young kid. I was a couple of years old. I grew up mainly in Holland, and then I subsequently moved to UK. Now, for me to go back to Somalia for the first time was quite an experience in 2015, because remember, I was born there, but I didn't grow up there. So for me to actually go back there and see it for the first time with my eyes was quite.
How old when you left?
I was 5 years old, and then so for me to experience that for the first time was quite amazing, and there's a reason, to be honest, why I created Somali Faces with Dunya Jamal. The reason why we created that was we grew up on the narrative that Somalis had this simple narrative of, these are just refugees without failed state for 25 years, feuding clans, warlords, etc., etc. We were tired of it because we went there, we saw these people, we actually saw the area, and it wasn't like that. So we say, well, why don't we just try to reclaim our narrative and just try to write our own stories instead of letting other people write stories for us. So what we done was, we actually went there and we interviewed hundreds of Somalis from all the regions. We have the ones in Somaliland, we have the ones in South Somalia, we have the ones in Kenya, Ethiopia we haven't been there yet, Djibouti we're going to go there soon. But basically our project is, instead of focusing on the lands that are divided by colonial state, we're just going to focus on the ethnic group, the Somali people. That way we transcend the national boundaries or the colonial boundaries that's been set by the Europeans in the 19th century. 19th century. So what we've done is we got the stories. Our aim was change the familiar narrative that is prominent, prominent in the media, and reclaim our narrative, and at the same time tell our own stories, and also provide a platform where the Somali people from, it doesn't matter which area you hail from, can come together as one people and also connect with each other. And so far, alhamdulillah, things have been going well. We collected hundreds of stories, but we added one additional objective on top of it, and that was done last year. While we were collecting these stories, we discovered, or we basically come across Somalis with such amazing stories, such as stories of resilience, of courage, of hardship, but yet, seem to be quite humble as well. I mean, they show the humility in such a way that it's inspiring, to be honest. Just to give you an example, when we visited the ghetto in the Puntland region, there was this Somali mother of 8. She had 8 children. She was divorced. She belonged to this minority group called the Somali Bantus, and she felt discriminated. She was discriminated on a daily basis, but yet she still tried to ignore that and tried to basically provide provisions for her children, to try to basically help, try to basically bring food to the table. And when we listened to her, her story, where she came from, what kind of experiences she went through, her struggles, her challenges, we put that on the Somali Faces platform. And one thing, once we put the story out, the people loved the story for many ways. And obviously, they loved the story not because it was positive, but it's because it showed the strong character of the Somali mother that was trying to bring food on the table for her children, no matter what. And amidst the discrimination that she faced on a daily basis. So just to give you an image, so the funny thing is there's no projector, so I just have to show the image of that Somali mother. Her name is actually called Isha. Let me just get a picture of her. Let's see.
Hold it for you.
Yeah, this basically Mom Isha. I think she had a we met her in Garowe. Amazing lady. Once we put the story out, people said, "Look, we have to do something about it. We have to actually help her out. Obviously, this can't go on. This has to change." So they asked us to fundraise for her. So what we done was do a GoFundMe fundraiser. We collected, I think, in one day we collected around £4,000 or £5,000. And what we done is, instead of handing the cash over to her, we said we're not going to obviously repeat what others have done, just handing cash over, and then obviously after a couple of months it ran out. She's still in the same situation. So we said, okay, we just sat down with her. I said, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you like to learn? What do you like to actually change in your life? She said, I always like to, operate a shop or business. I always want to go into business. So what we decided was we're gonna build a shop for her, from one of those convenient, just small, makeshift shops, one of those kiosks. And then she could just actually learn the art of business, and then that way she'll be self-sufficient. That way she will have continuous stream of income on a monthly basis, and that way she can also help her children. And that's what we did. We actually built a shop for her. We taught her how to operate. And the funny thing is, she had a knack for it. She had this inherent quality that she had a knack for how to actually operate the shop. So, and she came up with this idea. She said, okay, with the first profit I make, I'm going to get a solar panel. I'm going to expand my shop. It was quite amazing. Let me just see if I can have a picture of the shop. Yeah, there's a picture of her shop.
Very nice. Wow, very smart shop.
Yeah, she aptly named it Isha Shop, which is as well. Yeah, and now her children are in school. 8 children. She expanded her shop. She got a solar panel. It became actually a famous area now. A lot of people go there now. And she's self-sufficient now. She doesn't have to beg. She doesn't have to actually beg people for money or actually,
What do they sell?
They sell this general store items, like some food items. But yeah, that was a year ago actually, and her life changed. So we basically incorporated an objective where we try to change their lives or transform their lives with sustainable means. Instead of just handing cash over and then it's going to run out after a couple of months, we said, okay, let's do this. Let's do something tangible, something that actually will help them in the future. So thank you. Another person that we actually came across, and that was, if I recall correctly, that was last year, and I think it was somewhere mid June. Was Mama Munira. She was this old lady, 90 years old. She used to live in Poriole. She was actually from Poriole, but she was uprooted from her native town by the Shabab group. She used to own a farm. So what she done was she had one disabled son. Most of her children died as infants. So she was basically raising her disabled son on her own. And basically his child, so her grandson. So basically she was uprooted from her town and fled to the outskirts of Mogadishu, the capital city of Somalia. There where she was forced to live in this quite shanty area, and in one of those rusty, quiet places. It was quite disgusted by once I seen it, and it really pushed you at uncomfortable to see a person of that age living in that particular area. She had to basically wake up every day at 6 a.m. in the morning. She had to go to the market, and she had to literally beg just for some food or money so that she can feed her disabled son. And when we went there, when I asked her a couple of questions about her experience, why she's doing this, she was quite, even though she was begging, she wasn't showing that she was begging. So when she was talking to me, she was talking like a proud lady, which is quite funny as well. So when I actually got her story and asked her some critical questions, sensitive questions, we posted a story. And that story, to be honest, we just told her how her disabled son. This basically Mama Muniro. She's 90 years old. That one behind her is a disabled son. See that? He's quite old, 40, 50 years old. So when we posted that story, people actually said, "Okay, we have to do something. Can you guys do something about this?" So we fundraised for her. I think we got around £15,000 in a couple of days. Wow. And then what we done is we went to her. We said, "Okay, let's do something. Let's do something tangible. Let's go," because she was living in a small shanty area where it was more like an IDP, internal displaced person, people that are displaced within their own country, internal refugees. And so let's buy her a home, a land where she actually owns, and build her a house that she can live with her disabled son and her grandson, and then also build a shop that her grandson, he was 16 years old, can operate and also provide some kind of means of income for her. We've done that. So I don't have a picture of that shop, but I've got a picture of the house that we built for her. So let me see. that's the house that we built. I was thinking it was a process. We built her that house. That the land she owns, the land deed belongs to her. She was at a stage where she didn't have anything, but now she had land deed and a shop. And she passed away a month ago. But she passed with the state of mind that her children, her grandkids, are okay. Because they don't know she had a disabled son. Obviously, she passed away without nothing. Obviously, that guy, he's gonna die eventually as well. So she passed away in such a positive note. Actually, to be honest, it really made us proud, to be honest. So that's Mama Munira. So basically, what Somali faces, we try to incorporate that type of objective where if we come across a Somali in need, like really earnestly in need, we try to help them as much as we can. Instead of handing them cash, fundraising and handing them cash, we try to do something tangible to change their lives, to transform their lives, where they can basically get, get some kind of income for them on a permanent basis. Recently, there was a ongoing drought in Somali Peninsula, in Djibouti, in Somaliland, South Somalia, in Kenya, NLD. So while we were collecting stories, we came across these drought victims that actually moved from their villages to the towns just to get some aid from the international agencies. Now the problem with that is because we weren't actually planning to actually create a campaign or drought campaign, but what we done was try to interview the Somali drought victims and listen to them, listen to their experiences, listen to what they went through, try to humanize their stories. And one thing that they kept repeating was, we live in these faraway villages, and these international agencies, they force us to come to the towns, and the minute that we come into the towns, big cities, all the aid is gone, all the raised aid is gone. Then we have to go back hungry, no water, no food, and they live in this continuous cycle. So what we've done is, that has to change. It's not right. So we collected the stories, we collected their grievance, we collected their experiences, and we posted that on the Somali Faces platform, and then we created a campaign out of it. That campaign was, let's do something for them. Instead of actually forcing, where they are forced to actually visit the big cities to receive food, we can actually going to go to their villages, where they stay in their own native areas, and then bring the food to them so that they can actually, basically don't have to make that long trek to the big towns. So we raised, alhamdulillah, over I think $125,000. And then what we done is we actually went there and bought the food from the suppliers, tried to stir the local economy. And then what we done is also without actually deducting a penny from that raised money, we spent every cent that we raised towards the drought victims. Meaning we basically covered our own cost. Every cent that we raised, we went there and we actually helped them out. That way, because the problem with here is, let me tell you why. A month's supply for one family costs around $50 to $60. By the international agencies, I think for them an overhead is a month's supply is £150 or $150 because they add on top of that the overhead and all these unnecessary costs that's not needed. But obviously they needed just to keep going. But I'm saying what we've done is we try to change that. We basically cover our own costs, which is not much, and spend every penny on purchasing food items so that they can get the necessary supply. And the funny thing is, John, when it comes to the supplies, we make sure that these are essential items that they needed so that they can actually enjoy the food as well, instead of actually having this type of plain food that's been thrown at them. To be honest, we have seen that, and it happens a lot. So we actually included dates, palm dates. We basically include certain essential items so that it will help them in the long run. I think we raised $125,000. We helped over 50,000 Somalis with that money. Right. We operated in I think it was 12 regions, from the north all the way to the south, and we made sure that every time we present the food, we actually show pictures so people know the reality, see what's going on, and present that to the people, so that people know that actually the money is well spent. At the same time, these people are being taken care of, and also show them that it doesn't take much, it doesn't even need much to actually take care of whole family for 1 month. $50, $60 is nothing, which is 40 quid, 45 quid, that's nothing. So we show them that anyone can do that. We're not an NGO, we're not non-profit, we're basically a platform where we try to help people earnestly. We try to help them in the best possible way without jeopardizing or basically our credibility. And that's what we've done. And to be honest, to actually give back and to actually basically go there and help these people and put their stories out there, their experiences, it really basically humbled us in many ways. Now the drought campaign has finalized. I think, thank God, rain has fallen in many areas in Somaliland and in South Somalia. But yet, it seems like we just wait for another cycle of drought. This is going to happen soon as well. So, in order to basically prevent that, there has to be some quick reaction. There has to be some quick reaction from international agencies. Instead of waiting for famine to occur or famine to develop, they have to make sure that they get the aid quickly to these villages instead of just dropping them into big cities or big towns and wait for those villagers to make this long trek just to get their items. And that's something that has to change. And I think they're going to do that, hopefully. But the way that what we have witnessed while we were distributing food was abysmal. To be honest, it was something that really should change on many ways. Somalis have a saying that I can't remember actually. I'm just trying to translate that. It's, when there's drought, the greed increases. The greed level of greed. So there were people who were benefiting from this drought that was happening back home. So some of them, for example, the water truck owners. If you, for instance, was $3 short of just renting a water truck, they won't rent it out to you. $3. They will just basically say, okay, no, I'm not going to rent out to you. And this one truck can hold, I think, 8,000 liters of water. But I think that there's also another side where you have some of these water truck owners who fill this cherry cans, this yellow cherry cans, they fill them with water and they put them on the roads so that passing villagers can actually drink from that cherry cans. So you had a little bit of coins on both sides, that's what honest. But the same, but what we have seen was the greed of the increases, obviously, and there's a lot of competition, and this is a problem. The people, when there are disasters, when there are misfortunes, people capitalize on that. And that's a sad reality. I don't think that's been highlighted there when it comes to the mistake that was happening when solving or addressing the drought problem in Somalia. But it's something that we can publish as a report for what we have seen, what we have experienced, what we have witnessed, and how things can change based on the little experience that we had with these drought victims. And to be honest, to save a life is something big, especially in the Islam religion. To save one single life is like if you save the whole mankind. And these type of lessons need to be learned, and this need to be actually presented to the wider community instead of just waiting. International agencies that they're going to sort out. They're going to raise millions and millions of money, to solve the drought problem. And it's funny because they did raise hundreds of millions of dollars. Where did the money go? We raised 125k. We helped 50,000 Somalis. 125k. It's not much. What about millions of dollars? But the good thing that really came from this drought was the Somali-led initiatives. It seems that Somalis were taking ownership in addressing their problems. And there was also a lot of humanitarians, especially there was this French guy called Jerome. He was actually doing much commendable job. He raised a lot of money as well, tried to actually go there. He doesn't charge overhead as well. He basically just tries to purchase the items from the local economy or the local shops. And and that's something that was quite new as well. And a lot of especially international agencies were quite surprised as well. The fact that we didn't charge overhead and the fact that we made sure that we took charge of our own problems and tried to find solutions for it. And it makes me proud as well because these diasporic organizations, these diasporic groups or platforms or movements need to be empowered in many ways so that they don't have to rely on other agencies or other international agencies or other big organizations to do the work for them. They can do the work for themselves. We have shown it. A lot of people have shown it. And that's something that needs to be emphasized. The drought campaign has finally finished, but we'll be releasing a report as well of our experiences. We already released a transparency account of what we've done thus far. And and a lot of things has to change. We cannot repeat the same mistakes. It's been quite an eye-opening experience for us, and yeah, that's something that needs to be promoted. Yeah.
Thanks so much for that, Brother Mohammed. We're going to open up a bit of discussion and questions. I know Brother Janai wants to say something, and we'll take one round and we'll see how it goes. But I think maybe just one round. So I'm going to take as many comments and questions,
Okay.
and then you can have a chance to reply to that. Just thanks again for your presentation, and that's conveyed all the great initiatives that you've been a part of. And I just encourage everyone just to share the pages, the posts from Somali Faces. Add Brother Mohammed Shire on Facebook and Somali Faces. Follow that page. Share it with your friends, etc., etc. Do you have a Twitter?
The funny thing, I'm not active Twitter user, but yeah.
No worries. It'd be great to have Somali Faces Twitter pages. Would you have a blog?
But yeah, you can follow Somali Face on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. So
Okay,
we got these 3 platforms.
Great. So, Brother July, you want to start?
Yeah,
Take the mic, please.
Thank you for coming all the way from Leicester. And also, I feel honoured to be in your presence, knowing all the hard work and initiatives and care and compassion you have for your own people. I think that we can all learn a lot from it. Me, especially as someone that's only been politicised in the last 5 to 6 years properly, I will definitely take your empathy on board. I've got 2 questions. One is, since the Civil War, has there been disparity in the development of Somalia, or has there been like turmoil and drought and warfare throughout the whole country? Just how have the different regions developed since? And also, you spoke earlier about us not being reactionary and us kind of planning ahead for conflict and responding in a way that is effective. So are there any like water conservation projects? Are there any wells? Are there any reservoirs? How are people trying to store resources for the future?
Thanks for that. Anyone else want to come in? Anyone else? Yes, please, sister, if you don't mind speaking to the microphone.
I just, hear me?
Yeah.
I wanted to know, did you see anything being done by the local federal governments or central government? Because as Somali, I was aware that there was like a national relief front being organised, but I haven't really heard much about if they're not very transparent or what they've actually done. Or I'm just curious if you've witnessed it while you're there.
Thanks for that. Anyone else want to come in? Anyone else? So we'll let Mohammed respond to that. So national relief, national government, federal government question. Brother Janai is about water conservation in terms of preemptive strategies. And the first question was that you had?
To do with war throughout
Oh yeah,
the
to
whole
do,
country.
yeah. In terms of since 1991, has the whole country faced turmoil and instability, or has there been pockets where there's some progress?
No, the whole country obviously wasn't in a continuous turmoil. In 1991, for instance, you got the Somaliland region or Somaliland. They're the South Dakota country, their own country now. They had been relatively stable for the past 25 years. I've been there quite a couple of times. I visited Hargeisa, Burqa, Berbera, Sheikh, and this was quite, the security was amazing. You would never imagine that conflict has ever happened here. So for the 25 years, there wasn't any conflict in that area. You got the Puntland region as well. That's also it's a semi-autonomous federal region. It's been relatively stable for the past 15 years, I think since 1998. But majority of the conflicts was concentrated in the south, primarily in the capital, because the capital was the biggest city, and and that's what actually one of the areas that didn't actually wasn't actually stabilized. And Somalis had this view that if the capital is stabilized, the whole country will be stabilized. So at the moment, the capital is slowly recovering, slowly being stabilized, but we still got a long way ahead. So there hasn't been some kind of widespread turmoil in all the country. Somaliland has been peaceful for the past 25 years. Puntland relatively peaceful for the past 15 years. It's just the south, so Somalia, that was quite in turmoil.
To make one quick question, which country had like dominion over the south? Which Western power?
And of Somaliland.
Yeah.
with Western power, when it comes to Somaliland, it is the British and UK, because remember Somaliland was a British colony, while South Somalia or Italian Somaliland was colonized by the Italians. So at the moment, there are a lot of foreign actors or foreign entities in Somalia that are part of the ongoing situation. You got a lot of countries like Turkey, you got Saudi Arabia. Sorry, you got Saudi Arabia. You got Qatar. You got what else? You got the United States. Yeah, Turkey. I was mentioning that Turkey. The United States. You got a lot of entities, a lot of countries that are involved. So yeah, the second question was being proactive instead of having this mental, this basic mindset of being reactive every time something happens and just respond to it. The funny thing is, we can, but there's a lot of, and that's something that we came across all over there. There were a lot of, there's a lot of politics involved. For instance, certain areas in South Somalia you can't go because of the Al-Shabaab presence. It's dangerous. You can't go to those areas. Secondly is when it comes to the level of corruption. The level of corruption is amazingly high. For instance, you come there with a plan, you want to help these people, you want to basically come up with a plan that will prevent a certain disaster from reappearing again. You have to pay a certain amount of fee to the officials to make sure that their pockets are filled. And by the time you do that, you haven't got any money left, to actually implement the program. And that's a sad thing, to be honest. And it's something that is, unless that's systematically changed from the grassroots level, from the from the bottom level, it's not going to change in the long future. Because remember, I always believe, I always have the mentality, because especially when you study Somali history, in the 1960s, we started out quite well. Then we started, spiraling down into corruption. That corruption was quite amazing in the late 1960s. And you can see that level of corruption has reappeared again. And the reason why this type of corruption appears is because of the models that we adopt. We adopted in the 60s Italian parliamentary system. It was quite Italian type of Western style government. Similarly, we implemented that now as well. In a way, we have semi-parliamentary system, a semi-parliamentary system, and yet these problems seem to be recurring. It's like we're not learning from our lessons. We're not learning from our lessons. That's something that's quite sad. But so there's a lot of obstacles if you're trying to implement a change. But it's not impossible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying you have to have a thick skin for it and you have to have a lot of money to make this happen.
It's just talk about the federal national relief government.
Yeah, to be honest, while we were there, I think we had a brief chat with, I think it was Minister Mariam. Yeah, she's doing amazing work, by the way.
Minister for?
But she's Minister of Humanitarian and was it disaster, wasn't it?
Healthcare.
No, it was Minister of Disaster, wasn't it? Yeah, something with she's doing amazing stuff. She came up with these innovative ideas actually to bring faster responses to the drought victims, and these are all Somali-led ideas as well, which is something that was quite amazing. She praised the efforts of Somali Faces and another group called Al Walal, making sure that she was quite proud that these Somali diasporans coming back and trying to help out, and trying to come up with these ideas of how to actually make sure that aid is delivered in such a way that no time is being lost and not a lot of money is being spent on. So she actually, based on this type of idea, she came up with some kind of response unit or something where, to be honest, I haven't been following after what happened after she basically declared that response unit. That response unit was quite a genius idea, but I'm not quite sure what happened after that. But basically what the response unit was, where they had this hotline on basic landline number. People can call if they come out with the issues, for example, they haven't got food, they haven't got water, and then somebody said they send out teams to help these people out. So this type of ideas, the minister came with those type of innovative ideas to actually alleviate the sufferings of the drought victims. But as a federal government, to be honest, I haven't been following what they've been doing with the money. I know they disperse it to the federal states like Jubaland, Gobert, Hirshabelle, Puntland, and what they've done with that money, to be honest, I haven't been following, and I don't know. I don't want to speculate.
Thanks for the questions and the answer, brother. Anyone else want to come in? Please, Marina, and then anyone else after Marina? Rohan. I think I'm going to take those two. Anyone else after those two?
I think.
Okay, brother.
I just want to
I
ask
do.
one.
Could you take the microphone and talk, please?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah, of course. I just want to ask you one very basic question.
I think a lot of people ask themselves is how come that Somalia, which is supposed to be one of the top receiver of aid, on so many billions at international level, I mean at charity level, against Doctors Without Borders, and all those countless others, are supposed to be focused right there, right now. So how come there is, so much need when so many billions are always spent there?
We'll take a few minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, brother.
Just interesting. Probably some people remember a quote from Kissinger, saying, "Control the oil, control the country, control food, control the people." And I'm just curious about what's the agriculture industry or sector in Somalia, and in particular the small farms that are the people who actually feeding people historically, but now they are under all sorts of threats. So what kind of the practice and their struggles, or what kind of connection you have with from your organization and people here?
Great questions, thank you, and Brother Rohan.
Hey bro, just mirror Janara's words. I really admire everything you've done, your initiatives. I think they're really, really wonderful. I just want to speak about your, you mentioned the foreign actors within Somalia. I just wanted to bring the conversation over there for a little bit as well. And just wanted to ask you about these agitators, specifically American agitation within Somalia. We've witnessed a number of drone strikes there. I think, according to the Bureau of Investigations, about 43 since 2007, but that's probably quite a low number, and I think it's probably a lot higher than that. I want to see the purpose of these drone strikes and what exactly you think America is trying to achieve within Somalia, and the way it's, well, it seems that especially since 2011, this aggression has really stepped up. That obviously ties in a lot to Libya, and how the collapse of Libya basically seems to lead way to an open invasion of Africa by the US in this almost kind of scramble for Africa 2.0. And I wanted you to just speak a little bit about that and about the kind of foreign agitators within Somalia.
Great question, thank you. If just before you answer this, the last round, before we conclude, just to add to what Marina said, Marina's raised a very important point about the small farmers, because globally they're under vicious attacks, and they are as you say, they're the people who feed our people, and they are actually the people that most of us are born from as well, including myself. So just wanted to add that issue in, but also so to connect to that issue, why did the drought happen?
Yeah, that's
Because
another question.
you didn't give that context.
Okay.
Because I'm sure the issue of the way that Somalia has been deliberately destabilized by the West, the civil war, the issue of small farmers and agriculture, and the politics of the environment being destroyed by the West, all of these I think play factors. So anyway, just to reiterate, the brother said, what happened to the billions of aid? Sister asked small farmers, and I'm asking if you could give a more direct explanation, context of why the drought actually happened.
Okay.
And Rohan talking about direct imperialist attacks on Somalia. Didn't we have just a horrific massacre on a boat of Somalia? The Yemenis were killed just a few weeks ago. It was a massive massacre. Wasn't it around 100 Yemenis who were killed? Absolute horror. And I'd just like to, just to give honor to those martyrs and to raise people's attention. There's a massacre happened off the coast of Somalia, and we didn't mobilize around it. No one said hardly anything about it. Maybe did a post that day on social media. Anyway, sorry. So just in terms of Rohan's questions about direct imperialist attack.
Okay.
Please, Mohammed, thank you.
To answer the gentleman's question, Somalia receives, I think, one of the largest aid packages in Africa, but yet there's no tangible result or tangible change. Why is that? I think it's $1 million question, but I don't think I can actually answer that question fully, because you could say, remember when I talked about the level of corruption in Somalia, especially a lot of aid donors don't trust actors in Somalia when it comes to receiving this type of aid. So what they do is they pump into these NGOs as much as possible, and what they do, they basically try to deliver these aid. But the problem with that is it actually promotes more corruption and less accountability. And that's something that is quite relevant when it comes to Somali affairs. Is there's this level of NGO culture in the country where NGO basically controls all aspects of Somalia, and that's quite something that is known. It's not a secret, but I don't think that it's going to change anytime soon. Because remember, we basically repeating history. In the 1960s, Somalia was also one of the largest aid recipients in 1960s in Africa, but yet there was no tangible improvement. The money went to the pockets. People pickpocketed. They went into the pockets of the corrupt officials, and we just repeated it again. So to answer that question, I think that's something that you have to, as a politician on the ground, who have been holding those type of money for quite a number of years. Yeah.
Can I just add one comment?
Mm.
Somewhat, I'm not in this area, but I was told some of the foreign aid actually, in the name of foreign aid, actually is investment and investment for the private business. So, and also in collaboration with local NGOs, and they are doing, for example, the dam or the industry, the factories, and actually that related to eviction of the small farms. So in a way, it's vicious cycles.
It is.
And so it's not disappearing, but in a way, it's not really helping people on the ground.
Have you read the book? I think was it? Well, I can't remember. It was this. Sorry, the Zimbabwe economist. I can't remember. Sorry.
By Dambi Samoyo.
No, she's Nigerian, I think.
No, she was Zimbabwe or Zambia. I can't remember. It was something about why aid is not helping Africa.
No, it's Moyo. She's Zambian, I think.
Zimbabwean.
Dambisa Moyo. No?
Yeah, so I'm extremely bad English. I think I've been told to couple of times for recording it. Extremely bad. Yeah, actually, that's one book I would highly recommend, and she makes very compelling arguments, and yeah, to be honest, I agree with her in many ways.
Just to as well add into what Marina said, that the concept of civil society and NGOs, its roots and the way it's used is imperialist privatization of our countries. They want civil society disconnected from our states, and that's the economic political strategy in which they privatize, push back the sovereignty of the state, etc. Anyway, there's all this. It's a scam. It is. Scam. NGO, civil society, it's a big imperialist scam going on.
It's a kind of industry, we can say.
Sorry?
It's
just an industry.
It's an industry, a private
they're
industry,
only
as
about
Marina said.
Yeah, there's NGO culture in Somalia, and that's a sad
So
fact.
small farmers and the context of the drought.
Small farmers. A lot of actually. When it comes to small farmers, when it comes to small farmers, that we complain actually. Because when I read Somali news, actually I read from time to time Somali news, and they basically lodge their complaints online. They basically put their complaints on the Somali website. They basically are not invested. They're not empowered. That's a sad reality. When it comes to Somalia, majority of the farming communities are in the south, in the Bakol region, and sadly, it's also the most affected areas when it comes to drought. So the biggest farming agriculture areas, it's also the most affected when it comes to drought. Isn't that it's just something that makes you think. So the Bakol region, the Gaza region, the Lower Sharala, the Jubaland region, these are the quite fertile lands. But the problem with that is, first, that land's mostly owned by the Al-Shabaab. Yeah. The pockets that's not owned by Al-Shabaab, yeah, they basically are being bullied by the international agencies who import food. So instead of actually empowering these communities or these farming communities or these farmers, they basically try to destroy them. I've come across one local-led initiative, I think was a Forset Fund, who tries to actually promote, trying to empower the Somali farmers in actually, doing the, basically make sure that they compete with these huge organizations. And as long as it's something that's very commendable and it's something that's quite amazing to do. And again, it's a Somali-led initiative. But yeah, the situation is, to be honest, it's more of a Al-Shabaab controlled areas, the little areas that where farmers can actually freely farm. They're basically being bullied by more bigger organizations internationally.
Do you know what the percentage of the population are nomadic and what percentage of the population are small farmers?
On top of my head, I think majority of Somalis are nomadic. I think it's more a way of life, to be honest, when it comes to Somalis. The pastoralists, you have this agriculturist and full agriculturist, and these are mostly concentrated in the south, but they're not such a huge community. Now, when it comes to the military regime, the Siad Barre, what he done was in the 70s he actually promoted. He basically nationalized farming. He made sure that Somalis learned the art of farming, so that we could move away from the nomadic lifestyle. Somehow that
What
didn't
kind
actually.
of farming systems?
Pardon?
What kind of farming system? Are they industrialized farming system?
Yeah, it was more industrialized. It was more like where he actually tried the skills of actually farming on a large scale. So he had a famous drought that would happen in the 1974 called basically the long-tailed drought. It was a famous drought that claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of Somalis. So what he done was, he with the help of the Somali government, with the help of the Russian government, they basically relocated in Somali nomads living in the north to the south, where fertile areas, and they taught them how to farm. They basically created these farming communities. But I think it did go well to a certain point, but then somehow it was reversed. They basically went back to the old lifestyle. So it's something that requires a little bit of determination and actually dedication, but I don't think that actually was successful to a certain extent. It was actually quite a noble idea. It was a quite noble project, and to be honest, it would have promoted Somalia to self-sufficiency if we actually took hold of our own farm. Because remember, we got a huge sway of land when it comes to farming. I mean, we have two rivers, the Juba River and the Sharada River. We have the longest coastline in Africa, but yet we still rely on livestock instead of agriculture. And that's something that I don't think is going to change in the foreseeable future, especially in the current state that we are in. And like I said, there's a lot of actors in play, especially a lot of international agencies and a lot of foreign governmental actors. That's something that's quite complex and quite full of some of issues that one has to actually untangle before you get to the root cause of the problem.
Robin's question about direct imperialist harassment, aggression, etc.
When it comes to that, Somalia has received its fair share of aggressions. Now you have these continuous drones. I think was it you or sorry, yeah, you have these continuous drones that keeps bombarding Somalia, especially in the south, in the Geda region and the Juba region. And to be honest, they don't use the target the Shabab, the terrorist group, but they use the target also civilians, nomads. The death toll that we receive from these particular areas is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. They indiscriminately, fire on these civilians who they perceive as supporters of the Shabab movement, or the Shabab terrorist group. And it has been increased, like you said, since 2011. Was something that I don't think that's going to be reduced. I mean, it still keeps going. No one talks about it, and it's funny. No one talks about it, really. These drone attack happens the next day. People forget about it. Like it became some type of way of life. It became desensitized. I remember in Gado region, I think Bursara region, was it Bursara, where they actually bombed. I think was it Al Adde. Yeah, they bombed this community. I think dozens. Yeah, it was one of dozens of people actually died. No one talks about it. So this go back to the again. This goes back again to the Grenfell Tower, where basically, if we stay silent about it, justice, don't do anything about it, it will never change. And the problem with Somalia as well, and it's something that, to be honest, it's a sad truth, is if something happens in one particular region, it's not collectively shared by all Somalis. And that's the sad truth and sad reality. If something happens, let's say it's a Gaza region, Somalis automatically assume that, okay, since it happened in that particular region, let the people that live there, do something about it. If something happens in Iran, or something happens in Puntland region, or something happens in Somaliland, let them sort it out. You know what I mean? And that's something that it's part of the mentality that's predominant in many Somalis, and that's something that I've seen personally at times. I mean, it's a sickness, and like I said, that's the reason why these drones keep continuing occurring, and no one's going to talk about it, no one's going to say anything about it. Now, foreign presence in Somalia, like I said, Turkey has got a base there. The Americans have got the CIA has got a base in Kismayo. Buridogle, which is near Mogadishu, they've got a base there. UAE has got a base in Bosaso. So you see, there's a lot of actually foreign presence in there. It's just that no one's going to do anything about it at the moment.
So there's zero pushback from the government or from...
Pardon?
Has there been any, because we have seen a lot of investigation reports on the evidence about Kenyan military, especially Kenyan generals,
Yeah.
which are heavily involved in export of charcoal,
Yes.
and which are the main actor in the deforestation. So is there any legal action by the current government? Which is
See, there's the thing. There's again another good point. Yeah, so another good point as well when it comes to cargo that's happened, illegal, basically where Kenyan generals or the KDF, Kenyan Defense Forces, loot the resources of the Somali people in the Jubaland region, in the Kismayo, and no one tells anything because they got the consent of the regional authority in that particular city, which is the Jubaland region. And that's something that a lot of reports have been written about it, a lot of noise has been made about it, but nothing has been done about it. It shows the consent or the tacit approval that they got from the international community. No one cares. Illegal fishing. The pirates that you keep hearing about. I'm sure you've heard of pirates, not Pirates of the Caribbean, but the pirates of the Somali pirates. Again, illegal fishing by the big massive ships. Nothing's been done about it. So that's why we have to let our voice heard, and in order to do that, we have to be more conscious of our actions and our efforts. Yeah?
Final comments?
Just I want to thank you all for coming. It was amazing actually engaging with you guys. And I want to thank Sukan and the Malcolm X movement for receiving me. And make sure you guys follow us, Malcolm X movement, on Facebook. I think you guys got a website as well.
That's very kind of you. Very kind
Yeah,
of you.
but you know on Twitter is, aren't you?
Yeah, we're on Twitter.
Oh, you're on Twitter, yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, follow them on all the platforms that you can find
Instagram,
on.
Twitter, Facebook. They're trying to get rid of us. Lots of people trying to get rid of us. We're
Oh,
not going.
that's
We're
good,
not going
that's
anywhere.
good. No, keep the struggle alive, keep the struggle alive.
Mohammed, just on behalf of the Malcolm X movement, thanks so much. It's really been great. Finally, we've had this event with yourself. We have worked with Somali comrades before, and with other comrades of East Africa. We work with the Eritrean community as well, and we are absolutely committed through ongoingly, permanently, in giving people like you and others a platform so other people can learn and understand the full story of humanity, especially people like the Libyans, the Somalis, the Afghans, the Iraqis, the Yemenis, and others who are being devastated, who've been ravaged, who are still holding on to their dignity and to their humanity, and we must respect that and support that, and that's a big part of the Malcolm X movement's work. So on behalf of us, thank you so much. On behalf of Malcolm X movement, thank you for attending. Thanks to all our viewers who are listening and looking in. Please do get a copy of our magazine. It's £3 or whatever you can afford. Just lays out how we respect and honor Malcolm X and his legacy. Also, I have a DVD, a documentary about the war in Libya in 2011, and also a book on Muammar Gaddafi 5 years on from his martyrdom as well. So that might be something you may want to have a look at as well. So thank you again, Brother Mohammed Shire. Thank you to Somalia Faces. Please do popularize that further. Thanks for attending. And the next event is July 28th in this bookshop, and that's Libyans talking about terrorism. After Manchester and London Bridge as well, the perpetrators of those terrorist acts were actually facilitated in their terrorism in 2011 by Theresa May when she was Home Secretary. Salman Abidi, who blew up the girls in Manchester, him and his father were sent to Libya in 2011 to conduct the NATO war of aggression and destruction on Libya. So we are bringing the Libyan community here to this bookshop on the 28th of July so they can talk about it, because the media has silenced them. When everyone was talking about this, I even spoke to some of the colleagues I work with who went to Manchester. Why didn't you speak to the anti-imperialist Libyans who live in Manchester? Why didn't the media speak to the Libyans who understand what's really going on and who are victims and resisting that? Because these are the people they want to silence. These are the people they want to ensure have no voice, and their struggle does not succeed in getting rid of the bases, in reunifying their country. It's a desert country as well, like Somalia. Lots of parallels with Somalia and Libya. So please, do yes, that's right. And we have the next generation under 2 years old. He's raring to go. Thank you for the contribution. And with that final word, thank you everyone, and I hope you have a good evening.
Brilliant. Thank you.